people have cast their votes, those who are voting. And as per every election, we are gathered here to talk about the importance of gender-based violence prevention and response, particularly ahead of the elections, because these are people or these are organizations that are asking for our votes, that want to be at the forefront of policy making in this country, that want to create the next new laws, bills, policies. And we need to ask ourselves whether or not they're serious about it, but what they're putting in their manifestos. So my name is Bonzo Pilani. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Manager at Soul City Institute for Social Justice. We are a very old NGO. We are mostly known for TV drama series called Soul City and Soul Buddies. But over the past few years, we've pivoted into doing intersectional feminist advocacy work. We still do media work as well, but we're really on the ground doing social mobilization with young people, particularly young women and gender minorities. And that's the positionality that we come from. And for the past 3 years rather, during 16 days of activism, we have this campaign we call Khalemelang. And Khalemelang, for those who speak Sesotho, Setswana, or Sepedi, it means to call to order, to call out, And at Soul City, the Khalema, the fact that there's a lot of awareness around gender-based violence prevention and response, but there's no accountability. And through Khalemelang, we want to bring in accountability into the mix. And so every year, we do 16 days through Khalemelang, but this year we said Khalemelang 365, that accountability goes beyond just the 16 days, it goes beyond those days. And for us, thinking about the coming elections, we've already seen the political punditry around it, that it's going to be one of those elections that we need to really look out for. We might have a coalition government for the first time in democratic South Africa. And GBV needs to be at the forefront of that. And this is the conversation I'm going to have with my lovely panelists. And as well as you, we don't want to just talk, we are going to be engaging. I'm already looking at faces that look very passionate about this, that I'll be asking. And just for full disclosure, as I said, we work a lot with digital media, so we are actually concurrently live streaming this on our Facebook if you would like to go back and watch that. Because we see that particularly on Facebook, we engage young people there. Facebook is supposedly the old app for older people, but in fact, 70% of our audience of over 32,000 people are young people between the ages of 18 and 25. So young people, particularly in rural areas, are still on Facebook and very interactive there. But without further ado, with that long intro, I'd like to introduce my panelists. I have Terry Ann Adams, an incredible author and activist with us, who will also be sharing their views on what I've just discussed. We have Itumeleng Letswalo, who works with me at Soul City as a communications officer, and we have Daphne, an incredible artist and activist as well. And thank you. And we have a panel of young people because we believe that the young vote is what will change the next election. And just as ground rules, we're not here, we're anti-partisan. We're not here to speak about any political party. We're here to speak about the importance of political parties in general. So even as you interact with us, we really, online and in person, we really ask that you steer away from politicking in that way. This is not a conversation to prop up your own political allegiance in any way. Can you please respect the space that we've created, and also respect Ford Foundation as an organization that doesn't do that kind of work. And without further ado, we were talking as we were preparing around this topic and why it is so important for us to think through the elections and the importance of it. And I think the first question, and maybe some of the audience is also asking itself, is do political parties even play a role and in GBV or preventing it or responding to it, should they play a role? So I don't know who wants to take it first. I'll leave it quite fluid and open. Anyone? Terry, I said no one. That's because you're closest to my heart.
Oh, and physically. I think if the whole role of a governing party, which is what all political parties are trying to be next year, is to be a governing party, right? Is to make the country a better place for the citizens that live in it. So if you're a party that I am putting my vote in, and then if you're going to govern, I'm also going to put my money in forms of tax, I expect you to make the country a better place for me. And as a genderqueer person, as a disabled person, what does that mean when my risk is highest for gender-based violence? And that's why I think that political parties have a great responsibility, because you want my money in forms of tax. But you also want my trust. You want me to say, you're going to be in charge of running this country. So what's in it for me? How are you going to protect me?
Yeah, no, that's a very important point. I think, sometimes we don't see ourselves as a constituency that can hold governing organizations and even political parties that we subscribe to or not. The ones that want our votes accountable in different ways. Ipimele?
So, from a very surface level, I would say that yes, because it is all our responsibilities to end GBV. But when you look at the influence and the following that political parties have in this country, right, then 100% I would say that we are not wrong to be looking at them to say, hey, actually, what are you doing about this thing? What are you saying to your followers and the people who vote for you? How are you influencing them to take accountability, to stop gender-based violence, So I think when we think of especially how political the country is, we know how politically divided we are, right? So I would like to see political parties leveraging on their influence to address the scourge of GBV instead of course, distracting us with other things.
Yeah. And especially in the context of, every time we hear kind of the political discourse when it comes to party politics, we're hearing about corruption, we're hearing about ESCOM, we're hearing about PRASA, we're hearing about whether we're grey listed or not, we're hearing about all these economic issues or other kind of service delivery issues. But why are we not hearing about gender-based violence, where it is being politicized, it's used as political capital in the ways other issues and other problems that South Africa face is used? We often don't think about it in that way, and we wait for 16 days, we wait for a GBV summit, we wait for Women's Day, and all these other things that have actually been, for lack of a better word, bastardized, and even left out of a conversation, a political conversation when it comes to political parties. Daphne.
Yeah. So actually, to comment on what both of you were saying, is that we are very aware of these issues, like PRASA, like corruption. But for me, all of these issues are interlinked with gender-based violence. When we have issues of transport, we have issues of sanitization, we have issues of housing. People in vulnerable communities, people who are genderqueer, women, children, those are the people who are affected the most. Just to use an example, earlier this year in Cape Town, when there was the massive taxi strike, who are the bodies, who are the people who are affected the most? Who are the people who need to most likely travel from Langa, from Mitchell's Plains, from Kailicha, all of these places? Who are the vulnerable bodies who are actually being put on the line? So the issue is then a broader issue of this corruption and, it's actually this one's fault or whoever, but we are not actually recognizing that there are many vulnerable bodies who are facing the brunt of these broader issues.
What you say is so important, because even at this festival, we've watched a lot of films, we've been a part of a lot of discussions that link gender-based violence and women's rights issues to the mining, and how mining communities how there's a gendered impact, particularly within GBV or inequality and inequity that happens. Or just before the break, we were watching the Deadly A series as well, where it's the lives of Black women, to be specific, who are at the feeling the brunt of the air pollution that's happening in Emalahleni. And you're quite correct in saying service delivery is a gender issue, is a gender-based violence issue. If the street lights in Diepkloof are not working, and we know that most Black women or even marginalized people, working class people, leave their houses at 4 a.m. to travel to Johannesburg or to the nearest town to go to work. When those lights are not working, who is at risk? Whose safety is at risk, right? When there are potholes in the streets, when there's no transport to schools, or when there's overflowing rivers, whose children are crossing the rivers? That's gender-based violence, in different forms. But we don't see this discussion, And this is a question I'm asking to our audience as well. What does accountability look like when it comes to gender-based violence? What are the questions that you would like? We're collecting these questions on behalf of the public to give to political questions. What are the questions that you'd like political parties to answer when it comes to prioritizing gender-based violence? Is it just going to be a line in the manifesto, or is it something that they take seriously? So anyone who wants to, we don't want to wait till the end of the panel to take questions or inputs. Please feel free to raise your hand and engage with us as we move on with this conversation. But let's talk about that. What do we want in the manifestos, right? And I could briefly start by saying we have a national strategic plan for GBV and femicide, right? It was activists, it was women, it was queer people, it was the queer community that went to the streets and sat and marched and did a total shutdown march in 2018 to ask for the NSP. They shut down JSE offices for one day and said they will not leave until they meet with the president. It was activists that gave us the national strategic plan, which has been on the pipeline forever, and now we have it. But to be honest, in my own research, I've never seen one political party talk about it. So that's something that I'd like to see. We have 3 GBV bills that are sitting right now. What are they saying about those? We have, hate crimes bill. We have actual policy that is being put in place, but we're not hearing political parties talk about this. So what are these things that we can see what are the actionable things that political parties can do? That's not performative, that's actually about impact in the lives of people who are most marginalized and the most impacted. I'll start with you.
Interesting. So I'm going to talk about maybe the bills that you were mentioning, right? So that for a bill to pass, there's a process that happens in Parliament, right? Members of Parliament consist of leaders of various political parties. It's not just the government as the ruling party, right, who has that power or takes up that seat, right? So for me, in that parliamentary space, in the bills that are passed and proposed is where I would like to see political parties really stepping up, when we talk about the move or the call to decriminalize sex work, for example, I think seeing more support from political parties for that bill and a vote in support for that bill, for me, would be a great demonstration of the priority or the seriousness to end gender-based violence, because we know how sex workers in this country are affected by gender-based violence.
Could you elaborate a little bit on how sex workers are affected by gender-based violence?
Okay, yeah, sure. So as we know, there's a lot of stigma around sex work as a profession, right? Which then leads to heavy policing of, I'll say the women's bodies who do take up the profession of sex work, right? On multiple levels, from being harassed by police officers and having their condoms confiscated, from going to the clinics and being denied service, also being violated by their clients, right? And not being able to report that because the job that you are doing is already criminalized. So in the law's eyes, the criminal here is you and not the perpetrator, right? So the call to decriminalize sex work seeks to address those multiple layers of marginalization that sex workers find themselves in. And that's why I think it's so important for me to see support for the bill.
And a lot of the times these gendered issues that become or that impact gender-based violence are seen as controversial. We know kind of the conversations around sex work, even the the South African law reforms report that came out in 2017 didn't even want to use the term that sex work is decent work in the economic meaning of decent work. And to see political parties shy away from that is a political statement in and of itself. It's saying something to women and people who are sex workers. It's saying something about the rape of sex workers. It's saying something around the rates of HIV in this country, because we know how if sex work is decriminalized, we'll have better access to healthcare and all of these things. Thank you for bringing up that issue, because I think it gets lost sometimes and we moralize issues instead of really talking about, are we actually committed to ending gender-based violence? Forget your beliefs. Are you committed to ending gender-based violence? What do you believe in, how you are fit into the moral debate should be secondary to the rights and dignity of people to live without any violence and fear.
100%.
Terry?
Yeah, I think if we look at what I would want from political parties, I think everybody thinks that politicking starts once you've gotten the vote, right? And once you're now in parliament, now we want to see stuff happen from you. I think that political parties need to start doing the work in the same way that NGOs do it, right before. Like, why am I not seeing a political party-led program? I don't want to say CSI because C is corporate, but why am I not seeing an initiative led by a political party that addresses inequality in the townships, that it addresses disability inequality? Why must I wait for you to be in parliament to see what you can do? You have funding, use your funding. Like, that's my thing.
I love that. I love that. A lot of political parties use the phrase government in waiting. Then a government in waiting should put policies in waiting as well, right? Like put their money where their mouth is or where their votes are. And these are things that we need to take forward. You might belong to, I know we're not talking party politics today, but many people are thinking through what party they're going to vote for. And these are some of the questions we need to be asking, not only of ourselves on a deeply personal level, on where is our commitment and our commitment to ending gender-based violence, preventing it, and responding to it in our personal life, because the personal is political. But if you're going to be casting a vote for a government in waiting of some sort, we need to understand where they also fall on that line, so that we don't come to regret that. And so I love that. And I think that's a question that Soul City is going to add onto it, to be like, what initiatives do you have in your political party already existing, already in action, that talk to preventing GBV, responding adequately to GBV? What does your policy say? Do you have a sexual harassment policy? Do you have a gender response policy on anything?
Wage gap.
Wage gap. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because I think if I just have to add, like, when I apply for a job, I'm expected to submit a CV that has my past experience on it. I'm expected to submit a portfolio, especially for the job that I do. And I need to submit a portfolio of my work that I've done in the past, so that my employer can respect that or can trust that I can do the work that I am going to do, that they are going to pay me to do. This needs to happen before my interview. So why aren't we expecting that of political parties as well? Where's your CV? Where's your portfolio? How can I expect that you're going to look out for marginalized people, for disabled people, for women, for genderqueer people, if I haven't seen you done that before?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I just want to expand on what Terry was saying, and that for me personally, it feels like these political parties, our government, and just society in general always waits for Black femme queer bodies to, be treated in a very harsh manner. We wait for them to die, wait for them to be abused, wait for them to be raped before something happens. We are, not saying celebrating, but we are now in discussion of 60 days of activism. And, a day that sort of shook the nation was Uyinene. And people are also asking, and specifically on social media, people are asking, but what has happened after that? Why is it that you have to see another femme body or another body be brutally murdered on Women for Change or any sort of organization before there is action? And I think that's also, for me, it's a way that there's sort of intellectual abuse, that the people who are on the line, the people who experience the most violence, are the ones who are supposed to hold these people accountable. When you are supposed to alleviate us of the stress, we are the ones who experience it, yet our family members and our friends, our colleagues, we see how they are dying, and then we have to go out and ask you to do something about it. So there's the first trauma, and then there's sort of a second-degree trauma, and that again, that in and of itself shows us where our government and where any political party places importance onto us. Because if there isn't actually accountability, there isn't prevention, and it says so very clearly in the plan how to go about preventing these things. But I think it feels to me personally that political parties are perhaps more focused on the reconciliation post-apartheid, and we're trying to win the Influencer of the Year award, but not actually putting, action to where is needed the most. And again, why should I vote for you? I haven't actually seen your CV. Nothing that you are doing or seems, nothing that what you're saying is actually bringing me to the voting ballot. And we have a huge issue of youth in the country not being registered to vote. But why should they? And that's everyone's argument that has not registered to vote, who I said very proudly that they do not vote in this country, that it doesn't matter who is in power in this country because my life doesn't matter. And that's really sad, that when specifically the most vulnerable people in this country and the people who have economically been predispositioned say, well, it doesn't actually matter who is ruling because I'll still be at the back with my pit toilet. So, yeah.
No, that's true. A lot of the times, and we're not going to talk about it in detail, but we're going to talk about voter apathy, and I'll come to the audience right now. A no vote is a vote. It's saying something, right? It's not the vote that we may want, or it's definitely not the vote that political parties want, right? Because they want a vote for themselves. And different sectors of society, even in civil societies, differ in terms of whether or not it would be important to vote or not vote. And that's an ideological debate for another day. But the fact is that when people don't vote, like Daphne said, that is a vote. That is saying something. That is a sentiment around a lack of trust or belief in a political system that can work to better your life in one way or the other. And with voter apathy and the rates of gender-based violence in this country, we have to ask ourselves, is gender-based violence one of the issues that can pivot young people into voting? Could this be an issue that is personalized and deeply prioritized enough to shift the needle on voter apathy? And I'd like to, with that question as well, as I open it up to the audience, I'd also like to know, are there any things that you would like political parties to take into consideration when it comes to gender-based violence as we lead up to 2024? There's a few hands this side. We can start at the back and then here.
Hi, I'm Doreen, and I work for Just Attention International South Africa. And I think our concern with regards to what the government can and should be doing with gender-based violence is to critically interrogate the criminal legal system or criminal punishment system approach, right, to how it deals with gender-based violence on the one hand, and the criticisms are very founded and justified, right? As in, there's low conviction rates, there's low arrest rates, etc. But on the other hand, the reactionary approach, especially when you're looking at government, is looking at prisons as a solution as well. to gender-based violence, which we all know, or maybe not all, but a lot of people know. A lot of people know that prisons are essentially incubators of violence and incubators of patriarchal violence specifically. You're not sending people to prison to come out feminists. That is really not what's going to happen. So I understand the need for security and safety for victims and vulnerable people in the community, but also we need to acknowledge that our solution cannot solely rely on mass incarceration as well. And governments need to invest more intentionally, more deeply, and more critically in prevention. And I know they throw this term around all the time, but it's looking at are there services available even for, so we've got very limited resources available, right, for abused women and children generally, but it's also really difficult to find services that cater to boy victims as well, right? And I'm also just looking at how amazing it's been to have these young girls at this event, but then young boys at this event. How are we not already engaging with young boys? And government is already operating on that level. So I think government needs to really think about what justice can look like in the country, and even with this engagement with the NSP. Corrections is just a footnote, correctional services is a footnote, and correctional services is a footnote that's just basically we put down perpetrators. Not what do we do with people who are now incarcerated, or the few people who are incarcerated for gender-based violence. And I think that's our concern as an organization with regards to government and how it deals with GBV.
Thank you so much. That was very important. Yes, we want to see.
Hi, I'm Renisa from Umanda. You know what's my concern here, Ne? I hear that you are speaking about government and everything around these votes and stuff. What happened to the fund that was given to civil society to run advocacy programs, to develop women in civil society or in rural areas regarding gender-based violence? Because if we started with that fund and we worked as civil society, I doubt the rate of gender-based violence would have been so high. They took that money, they put it under the carpet, we are stuck with the issue. If you look at the femicide cases that was done in Nelspruit regarding, again, I will not mention the political party because we were told not to mention, how quick that case was done. How quick those perpetrators were caught. But if you look at the case, that happened, what happened to that case? That file was put under the carpet as well. So if you look at government is only looking at things that are happening on their side. They're not worried about who else is being affected by the rate of gender-based violence. So we need to go and ask with government, so that we can make these women aware of the issues that are happening in our areas, and that we can develop our women with skills, and we can develop them with umsebenzi, so that the rate of gender-based violence is aware. Because as long as these women are still asking for money from these men, it's not going to go down. Why is it such a pets? It's not going to go down. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And you know, with that, we see the reaction to, we saw it with Karabo Mokoena, may her soul rest in peace, where when you're a certain class level, when you look a certain way, when you are considered too beautiful to be killed, as some, Sisi was wearing that dress that wrote that Susan Shabam said when Karabo Mokoena passed away, I'll never forget that. And even Figile Mbalula, who was saying, you know, who was the minister at the time, these are two ministers who were saying those things, that they're people who are too beautiful to kill, you know, and when they are high, it's even very shocking to say there are high profile cases, femicide cases, but it goes to the class level that you're in, right? Who knows you, who knows who your family is connected to, who you are in society, and whether you're considered beautiful enough to be raped or killed. And these are some of the reactionary ways we also see our policies not being taken into seriously enough, where the system only works when somebody wants to look good, when there is a lot at stake. And I think there is a lot at stake going into the election, you know. And this is where we're going to see a lot of political parties on their best behavior in many ways, or on their seemingly best behavior in other ways. But we need to look at the track record, like Terian said, right? Look at their commitment to marginalized communities. And look at their commitment to already existing policies that are either waiting in National Assembly at NCOP level, or they are open for public comments. Are these political parties actually putting comments through? What are they saying during the debates in Parliament? These are things that we need to know. I saw another 2 more hands this side, and here, and then we'll come on to the other side. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Talented from Zimbabwe, and I'm going to speak from an outsider perspective. And probably you already know this, that South Africa is an envy for at least the region, the Southern African region. But we know that things are not easy here. I think what I want to place emphasis on is that in as much as we see South Africa as being here, we also see that there's potential for South Africa to go on a downward spiral in the way we did. And I mean, there are a lot of complex things that I could talk about, but I want to talk about the economy. So coming from Zimbabwe, I think one of the things you would know is that our economy basically crashed. And we understand why. It's capitalism, patriarchy, and so forth. It's not that Zimbabwe is a rich, very rich country, the same as South Africa. And in as much as we are focused as a women's movement, as a feminist movement, on violence against women and girls, gender-based violence, and want to really focus on that, I believe that we also should not let our eyes off the conversations around the economy. Because what has happened in Zim is that over time, the conversation around governance and the economy is almost an untouchable conversation. And there's an expectation that women's organizations need to touch only the soft issues. But you cannot detach an economy in doldrums from gender-based violence. So what I wanted to just place emphasis on is that let's not lose our focus. Yes, it's important to push, you know, violence against women as a subject, but the economy is very key. And of course, when you look at stats, most of the violences that we see, a lot of our young men are triggered, and they're coming from impoverished communities. And as a result, you know, the economy is a huge driver of the violence that we face. So in Zimbabwe, the government successfully managed to relegate that conversation to a privileged few, and it's almost as if you can't touch it now because no one, the public accounts, we can't keep track of that anymore. As a civil society, I generally feel we don't even have the capacity to interrogate what's happening with our economy. Deals get signed, Anglo-American and them on our minds. Our resources are being siphoned outside. And that deepens the poverty, which deepens the violence. But we are now so far removed from that conversation. So this for me is just a reminder to say, let's not make them push us into a corner where we are known to be, oh, they have their banners, give them space, allow them to, you know, get a mic and speak. We should also engage with a bigger conversation because it has a bearing ultimately on everything else that happens.
Thank you so much. I think that side. And as we get there, you know, there has been issues around the fact that so many issues are feminist issues, are gender issues, you know. The economy, there's already research that's showing that in mining communities, the gender-based violence there is higher because of the fact that it's a mining community and what happens in mining communities specific to there, or the fact that there's so many gendered issues or issues that are mainstream that political parties and people policymakers can take into account and gender them. For instance, this year's government theme in South Africa for 16 days of activism is water as a human rights and gender issue. Why? Who goes to the river when there's no water? Women. What happens to women when they go to the river or wherever? Or what happens in spaces where they're shared public toilets, where not every house has a toilet of its own, right? That's where the violence happens, in public shared toilets in different communities. So there is an opportunity for them to take these issues seriously, but they don't. They can genderize all of them because there is a gender and feminist consciousness that is required in all policy issues. But we don't see that happening at all.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Noma Denkosi. I'm from Umalanga in an organization called Umandla. Wow. So I'm a politician. I'm also a PR councillor sitting in a municipality in Mpumalanga. Before we space of being professional, I don't know Marubuting, but the space for me and it's feel like some crowded because the activism in me, that thing in me, the fire that is burning here of being a feminist, I'm called. But the political party NGO, I'm not gonna mention names and all that. I'm leading the LGBTQI committee in the province. To talk to the LGBTQI community, what do you want from our manifesto? There's also a committee that speaks about GBV. It's just that in that political party, there's no funding. If funding is for other things. As women, there's no funding. That is why we cannot reach most of the LGBTQI community. And abanye bakhulu kuzikhulumela like bafike basho ukuthi okay, this is what we want from a political view. It's because they are not used to ukuthi ama-political party beza kibo bakhulume nabo about their needs as LGBTQI. Then another thing is that I feel as if nathi kule space sethu se activism and nalaba abasifundayo. Funders most of the time banalento yokuthi I want you guys to speak about this only. Abezi in a way yokuthi communities, what do you want? Yithi activists ekumele siye emphakathini sithi no, let's speak about the manifestos. These political parties need to know what Tina manifesto as women. What do you want? We are affected by money. Does the SNP speaks about our rights, our bodies, amanzi angcolile in the community? Does the SNP speaks about how do we benefit as women ule SLP? So I think Lendo, because Tina vele singabantu esikhulumayo as activists, we need ukuthi sithathe Lendo like I feel bad ukuthi lama NGO amakhulu basibekela imithetho nabo bayafana ne-government and somehow because bayasitshela ukuthi senzile. Like Isol City, I'm sorry, but I have to put in Kulum. Isol City, I feel as if Isponsara, Gauteng, Cape Town, What about us in Mpumalanga? What about the women? We have
organizations. We work in Bushbuck Ridge. Soul City is present in 9 provinces. I don't want to defend us, but we do GBV prevention work in all provinces, and we work in all 9 provinces.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Accountability in action.
Yeah,
no, I just wanted to,
Okay. it's fine. But then, Soul City has been there forever. Sisakhula nathi besijahe ukuyobheka ama-soul values. But then I feel as if nani nivalelekile ekhoneni, you are being guided by your funders to say you must do this and that and that. And sometimes person feel as if because our funders are white, they only target certain topics of society. There are topics, funders, that they don't want us to talk about. So I'm saying it's not only Soul City, but every funder. So mina ngakhuluma the whole day. One thing in Funuki Shuguti, let's all go there and tell this political parties what do we want? What do we want? I heard you saying political parties at government in waiting. Bameleli for us.
Yes.
And I think we should go to their spaces and talk about what do we want as women. And the current political party as leader has failed us. I think, okay, Mamwini Mandela Lakona is not proud of what is happening to the young women and the women of South Africa, because that one was advocating for us.
I'm going to cut you short because we have other questions, but thank you so much. As we were saying, what are they waiting for and what are they waiting with as a big issue? And I think, you talk on funding. Funding is a big issue, not just for political parties, for the NGO space as well. What does feminist funding look like in all accounts? Feminist investments, what does it look like? Imagine we don't even talk women empowerment and women, equality. That is not enough. We're looking for feminist conscious social justice work that can be put into action. And I really appreciate the fact that accountability, from awareness to accountability. Accountability works in different ways. Before we come to you, I would just like to come back to the panelists and ask them, you've heard so much already, and just a reaction towards what the discussion around that, and if you could relate it to also voter apathy, as we were talking about, that it's important to vote for many reasons, but it's also important for us to understand why people don't vote, particularly young people who are disillusioned, and rightfully so in many ways. So considering the disappointments, the anticipation, even the anxiety that exists within the climate right now, going into 2024, I'm hopeless. I'm going to be very honest. I'm incredibly hopeless at the moment. I'm confused. I want to cast the vote because I think it's important, but I don't know who, how, when, and even if it doesn't matter. And I say this as somebody who has class privilege. I'm sitting here talking to. I have audience. I have the ability to influence so many things, and I feel this apathetic. What about Unosipho in Kwandangezi, or Lesego ko Pitidisulejango, or Lerato in Kopano? Like, what about them if we're feeling this way?
Sacrifice myself. There was one particular conversation that was had amongst the conversations we were having now that really struck a chord with me, and it was around how, the whole statement about this person is too beautiful to have experienced violence, right? And the reason why it struck a chord is because that's the reason why disabled women have a higher chance of being in intimate partner violence or of being raped. Because when you hear about a person with a disability, a physical disability, mental disability, cognitive disability, being raped, they go, oh, that person should be grateful. Who would want to sleep with that person?
Sure.
That's the attitude that leads to people with disabilities being 3 times higher a chance of experiencing gender-based violence, and especially sexual violence because of that. And I think I'll be, we're amongst friends here. So I'll say with myself, a lot of people get shocked when they find out I'm married. right? And when they look at a husband and he's not a troll, they look at him like, oh, how did you back that
So
up?
your husband is a charmer, essentially. That's what you're bragging about. Just say you wanted to tell us that.
So they'll look at me like, oh, and a lot of people have actually asked me, like, why did you go for a person with albinism?
Wow.
Like, you could hire any girl, but any person. Why did you go for a person with albinism? Or why, like, oh, you must be such a great person to be with Terry. Like, you have sacrificed out of yourself, you know, and that's what leads, you know, it sounds harmless until a person with a physical disability gets raped. And then the conversation is, really? Because it starts with statements like, this person was too beautiful to get.
Sure.
So yeah, that really struck a chord with me. On the voter apathy thing, I will be honest, the last 2 elections I was like, and the reason is because I didn't know, first of all, as a person with disability, as an autistic person, I didn't want to go and stand in a queue. I was like, I'm not going to do that. It's hot. I have albinism. I'm going to stand in the sun. I'm going to burn. I'm going to get skin cancer. For what?
Sure.
Why? So for me, it was like just the barriers of access. And I didn't know I could apply for a special vote.
Sure.
And I didn't know what the special vote means. I didn't know the education around the special vote. But also, why is it a special vote? Why can't the vote be the vote and people with disabilities have the accommodation? Why must we be singled out? Like, why must there be a day and all of us must go, must vote, and then everybody say, oh, yeah, the disabled people are voting. Like, why isn't there inclusion in the voter process? And why isn't there more education around the fact that I can go vote as an autistic person and I'm not going to have a meltdown, or I can vote as a person who has albinism and I'm not going to burn, you know? So that was my reason for not. But this time, I'm voting.
Yay.
I'm voting.
Yay.
And I'm going for the special vote. I'll tell you guys how it goes.
Sorry, why are you voting this time around?
Oh, why? I'm voting this time around because I realized that if 3 people vote and 20 people abstain, and 2 people vote for bad person and 1 person votes for good person, bad person still gets all the money, even though 20 people abstain. So that's why I'm voting.
So understanding the electoral system.
Education, just before you go, you know, I think there's a lack of, and this relates to GBV as well, and the policies, you know, National Strategic Plan. I wonder if I didn't work in the space, whether I would know the 6 pillars of the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, right? What are institutions, what is happening for awareness campaigns? Is it translated into all languages? Are we creating little books for kids to understand what Pillar 1 is, what justice is, where to go if the Malumet's Banbane touches them funny? Is the comprehensive sexuality education in school enough to say your private part is your private part and no one should touch you there, you know? So it even goes in there that there's a lack of knowledge across world. And these gaps in knowledge intersect at a point that impact our lives in so many different ways. So another question, which I don't think we're going to even have a chance to even unpack, is what do we do with the lack of voter education or even education around GBV and the policy and the bills that have been built and to respond to it?
So what struck a chord for me was I was saying more about the consultation process when it comes to manifestos, right? So firstly, I have never voted before. And this is the first time that I'm even thinking about voting. And the reason why I have even considered voting is because I was able to be in one of the spaces where, you know, there was consultation around the manifesto. What do you, just to feel like I have a voice, whether or not they're even going to, you know, take it seriously, but feeling in that moment like I was being heard, like my voice mattered, like what I had to say actually mattered, made me feel like, oh, you know what? maybe I should vote. Maybe I can vote this year, you know? So I feel like as a takeaway to political parties, consultation is really important. We could not stress this enough. Creating platforms for especially young people, young queer people, to have a voice, to be able to speak about what they're going through and what they would like to see, could go a long way in terms of combating, voter apathy, because a lot of the times political parties only want to talk to us when they want us to vote for them, and even then they're talking at us, not with us,
Or
so
listening.
not even listening, yes, right? So I think I would like to see that more strategic way of engaging with citizens between political parties, right? Where we are respecting each other's intellects. Like, don't give me a food parcel and think that's what's going to make me vote for you. Because next week that food is going to be finished and I'm going to be grumpy again.
Yeah.
So consultation.
I love that.
Yeah, one thing that stood out for me was when the speaker from Mumanda said, "Sifuna imali."
Yay!
And firstly, when I think most of us have TikTok or engage with TikTok or social media in general. And through TikTok, I found out that the funding was cut for campaigns and educational campaigns to teach people how to vote, where to vote, what are the resources. And yeah, that's the thing. The money that is being used, that we do actually have to educate people, is being used for corruption. And corruption, again, is a gender-based violence issue. So if you are using the money that's supposed to be used towards education, we don't have an intellect issue in South Africa. This is not an issue of, but during apartheid, so and so. We have many colonial issues and things that are still, left behind of that time. But the issue is that if people in, vulnerable communities are not actually being taught how to register to vote, where are they also getting access to internet? Where are they registering to vote? Also, another example, I only decided to read the Manifestos because I was going to be in a panel discussion today. I don't read Manifestos for fun. But the thing is, if you are thinking about the average South African, are people going on their phones or just, on a Saturday, are you really going to be reading a manifesto? No. So for me, as a young person, as a young queer person, I would actually like any political party to come to me and say, hey, we'll actually, maybe give you some money, or maybe you can be a part of our youth campaign and make TikTok videos or social media videos, 2 minutes, just to explain to people how to vote, and also how exactly do you benefit from voting? What is in our manifestos? What is actually in the Constitution? If you know that there is something in there that you will benefit from, most definitely you will vote. Yeah. If I know that there's going to be food at the party, I will come. But if I know
This is why we're all here.
if you're just going jail, then you're just voting. What does voting actually help? So if I know on a very basic level, and also not intellectualizing everything that, the 125-page manifesto or the NSP plan, if we can also just simplify it in everyone's language, then I think people will also start to come to the party and feel that, yes, your voice does matter. If, we have these leaflets and these books to show children and to show young people, even older people who are still vulnerable in communities, why certain things are not okay. It is our responsibility to educate. And also in terms of voting, I am quite a regular voter. But I think that I'm a regular voter because I have class privilege. And because of that privilege, I've always known what it means to not vote. If I was not in the class that I'm in and didn't have the privilege that I do have, I would also think, well, okay, when I open my tab, even if I have a tab, is there water?
Sure.
What is going to help? So I know that I need to vote because when I open the tab, there's water if I pay my bills. So yeah, it is our responsibility to educate people, and that's why I also do the work that I do, because I have immense privilege, and it is our responsibility to bring the message, to take these manifestos and make a cute little 2-minute video so that somebody on the ground, in the worst terms that I can use, actually understands why it is important for you to vote and what you will really benefit, not just, a packet and a t-shirt, but that you actually have more rights when you vote.
No, true. Consultation, marginalized communities, thinking about what it means for them, and as well as really the importance of people, listening to people. It was World AIDS Day last week. The theme was let communities lead. Nothing for us without us. And unfortunately, we have to wrap up this very hot conversation. It was getting so warm in here, but we can engage outside as we get our coffee and as we get our water. We really want to hear. We really want you to sign our petition, demanding political parties prioritize this. We want to engage, we want to collaborate with other civil society organizations and individuals doing this work. And with those parting thoughts, those were our resting remarks. And to our online audiences, we will address your questions as well once we go offline. But thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for engaging. I learned so much from being in this room, hearing what different organizations are doing, what JBI is doing, what Lumanda is doing, and what Lumanda demands to be done in our mining communities, our sisters in Zimbabwe, and the work that they're doing. It is a collective effort to end GBV, and we all can play a part in it. Thank you and have a great afternoon.